Catherine was not born into Russian nobility, nor was she destined for greatness at birth. She entered the world as Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst, the daughter of a minor German prince with little expectation of wielding power. Yet, fate had other plans for the ambitious young girl. At just 14, she was selected as the bride for Grand Duke Peter, the heir to the Russian throne. The journey to Russia was more than a passage across borders. It was a step into an unknown and formidable world. The Russian court, with its vast, gilded halls and rigid traditions, was a place of icy grandeur where power shifted in whispers and alliances were as fragile as glass. To survive, she had to adapt. She cast aside her German heritage, embracing Orthodox Christianity with a devotion that impressed even the most skeptical nobles. With her baptism, she took on a new name, Catherine, marking the first step in her transformation. Yet, marriage did not bring the security she had hoped for. Peter, awkward and petulant, showed no interest in his young wife, preferring the company of his toy soldiers and foreign officers to that of his bride. He saw Catherine not as a partner, but as a political tool, and treated her with indifference, if not outright disdain. Isolated and ignored, she could have easily faded into the background, another forgotten foreign princess in an unfamiliar court. But Catherine was neither weak nor complacent. She refused to let her circumstances define her. Instead, she turned to books, devouring the works of philosophers and historians. She listened closely to the conversations that unfolded in the royal court, studying the hidden tensions and the shifting alliances. She understood that mere survival was not enough. She had to carve out her own place in this world. Determined to claim a future beyond her loveless marriage, Catherine worked to endear herself to the Russian people and its nobility. She mastered the Russian language, observing their customs and adopting their mannerisms, ensuring that she would never again be seen as an outsider. She cultivated allies among influential courtiers, gaining favor through charm and intelligence rather than birthright. Every move she made was deliberate, every friendship carefully chosen, every lesson absorbed with patience. She was no longer the timid German princess who had arrived at the Russian court. She was transforming into something far greater. The throne was not yet hers, but she was preparing for the day when it would be within her grasp. Peter III's reign was brief, but in that short time, he managed to alienate nearly every faction of Russian society. His admiration for Frederick the Great of Prussia, Russia's long-standing enemy, outraged the military, which had spent years fighting costly wars against Prussian forces. His reforms, though meant to modernize the empire, were seen as reckless, favoring foreign ideals over Russian traditions. He mocked Russian customs, ignored the Orthodox Church, and dismissed the very nobles who had once supported him. His erratic behavior, combined with his lack of regard for Russia's identity, turned potential allies into enemies. Catherine, always observant, recognized the shifting tides. She understood that loyalty in the Russian court was fragile, and as Peter's support crumbled, she positioned herself as the alternative. In clandestine meetings, she won the trust of key military leaders, influential nobles, and the powerful Orthodox clergy. She did not seek power rashly. She built a coalition that would ensure her success. The decisive moment came on a summer morning in 1762. Peter had left St. Petersburg for his country palace, unaware that his fate was already sealed. In his absence, Catherine made her move. Dressed in a military uniform, she rode through the streets of the capital, her presence commanding and undeniable. Soldiers swore their allegiance, the people cheered, and within hours, the city belonged to her. Without a single battle, she had taken the empire. Peter, abandoned and powerless, was left with no choice but to abdicate. He was arrested and taken into custody, a fallen emperor without an army, a king without a kingdom. Days later, news of his death spread through the court. The official explanation was an illness, but few believed it. Whispers of foul play echoed through the corridors of power, though no proof ever emerged. His end was swift and unceremonious, the final chapter of a reign that had never truly begun. Catherine had achieved what no woman before her had dared. She had seized an empire not through inheritance, but through sheer will. But her triumph was only the beginning. Russia was vast, its people divided, its power precarious. Taking the throne had been an act of brilliance, but ruling it would be a test of endurance. She had proven herself capable of strategy and intrigue, but now she faced a challenge far greater than a palace coup. She had to justify her rule, to show the world that she was more than an ambitious usurper. She had to transform herself from a conqueror into a true empress. Catherine did not see Russia as a kingdom to be ruled by brute force alone. She envisioned it as a civilization to be shaped, refined, and elevated to match the great European powers. Unlike her predecessors, who governed through military dominance and rigid tradition, she sought to transform the empire through knowledge, culture, and reform. The ideas of the Enlightenment fascinated her, and she devoured the works of Voltaire, Montesquieu, and Diderot. These thinkers championed reason, education, and the rights of man. Concepts that had begun to reshape Europe. Catherine was not content to simply read. She corresponded with these intellectuals, debating philosophy, governance, and the future of society. If the West was surging ahead with new ideas, Russia would not be left in the shadows. Her reign would not be measured solely by wars and conquests, but by the sweeping transformation of an empire's identity. Her reforms touched nearly every aspect of Russian life, though they were tempered by political realities. She overhauled the legal system, drafting the Nakaz, a document that called for a more just and rational society based on Enlightenment principles. Though much of it remained theoretical, it signaled a new direction, one that rejected the cruelty of arbitrary rule. Education became a priority, no longer limited to the privileged few. She established schools for girls, a radical notion in a world where women were rarely given formal instruction. Beyond domestic reforms, she expanded Russia's borders through calculated diplomacy and military strength. Her armies secured Crimea, gaining access to the Black Sea. She claimed vast portions of Poland, ensuring Russian dominance in Eastern Europe. Lands were taken from the crumbling Ottoman Empire, further solidifying Russia's position as a great power. With each victory, Russia's influence grew, no longer a distant frontier, but a key player in global affairs. Yet, for all her ambitions, Catherine understood that power was a fragile balance. The nobility, whose loyalty had secured her throne, remained a formidable force. She could not afford to alienate them, and so she granted them privileges while subtly tightening her control. The serfs, millions of peasants bound to the land, saw little change in their lives. The weight of their oppression remained, untouched by the promises of reform. For all her admiration of Enlightenment ideals, Catherine knew that too much change, too quickly, could fracture the very empire she had built. She gave Russia progress, but never enough to spark rebellion. Her vision for the nation was grand, yet always measured, ensuring that the foundations of the old order remained firmly in place. For 34 years, Catherine ruled with an iron will and an enlightened mind, securing her place as the longest-reigning female leader in Russian history. The empire she inherited was vast but stagnant, steeped in outdated traditions and inefficiencies. By the time of her death, Russia had transformed into a cultural and intellectual force. She filled St. Petersburg with European art and architecture, turning it into a city of grandeur that rivaled the courts of the West. Libraries, hospitals, and theatres flourished under her rule, reinforcing her vision of a Russia that was not only militarily powerful but also a beacon of knowledge and sophistication. Yet, beneath the splendour, unrest simmered. The most serious challenge to her reign came in the form of the Pugachev Rebellion, a peasant uprising led by a man who falsely claimed to be her late husband. Peter III, promising freedom to the oppressed serfs, his movement gained momentum, forcing Catherine to confront the fragile balance upon which her empire rested. The rebellion was swiftly crushed, its leader executed, but the message was clear: beneath Russia's growing power lay deep social fractures. Progress, no matter how carefully measured, could not forever suppress the demands for change. When Catherine died in 1796, she left behind an empire stronger than ever, yet one that remained poised between two worlds. Russia had expanded its borders, modernized its institutions, and asserted its place among the great European powers, but the rigid structure of its society had not truly changed. The seeds of revolution lay dormant, waiting for a ruler less cautious than she. Her legacy was one of ambition and progress, yet also of restraint, an empire reshaped, but not yet reborn. Thanks for tuning in to the past. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next time for more stories that shaped our world.